All right. Hi there, great people. And on Instagram, hi, welcome. It has been a long, long time since I've seen you all live on YouTube. We started this, we did a thing. So, hi, everyone, Dr. Bernita Glenn White. I go by Dr. V, and I am many things. An elite life changer is how I will sum it up. If you've been watching me or listening to me, I've been like the brilliant solutionist, which I think I may go back to that title because I actually do like helping people figure out their life plans and helping them be their own solution to their problems. I just help people see their solutions. But I am getting into talking about life lessons from Creed 3 on YouTube. I did a thing and it was kind of an introduction. Instagram, I did not do that. So if you're new to me, hi, welcome. You've seen things in my bio and everything. And overall, I help people elevate, explore, expand their brilliance, and embrace their brilliance, expand their life, explore new possibilities, and elevate into new realities, create dynamic life plans so that they can live the life of their dreams and their desires and turn them into reality. I focus on all areas of life, but if you're brand new to me, my background is in education. I have 5 degrees and they span from teaching mathematics to leadership and the big umbrella of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and leadership. So with that also becomes like part of my background is also in understanding mindset, mind growth, human behavior. Not that I'm a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but we took a lot of classes in human behavior in education, and I've had to focus on all of that. What led me to talking about different life areas is because I believe that we are a whole human being. A lot of us focus so much on our professional side that we forgot about our personal side. And my overall mission is to really bankrupt the graveyard, help 1 billion people bankrupt the graveyard, meaning I want to help a billion people understand who they are, why they are here, let them know that they are also the solution to other people's problems. And I believe we do that through education, transformation, and application, whatever that may look like for you. So, when I said I help people create dynamic life plans for their life, I like to think of life as a university, and there are between 5 and 15 categories of life, depending on how you want to define them. And I think a lot of us have done well in school a lot because they told us a path to go on to, and it was laid out for us. And it may not have been linear, but at least it looked as if it could be linear. We know that if you've gone to traditional college, you know that it wasn't just straight through and you're done. There was some things you had to do, but at least you had a path. But then I realized that a lot of career professionals, people who are in transition, people who want to do more, especially with their experience and expertise, is why do I feel stuck when I am successful? And it is because maybe you're not feeling successful in other areas of your life, and you probably don't really know all of the other areas of your life. We tend to focus on professional and business, or not professional and business, professional and personal. And then, but it's like, well, what really is personal? How does that really break down? And it's really getting at the core of who you be. And so, in all of that, there is a realignment and a reassessment, a reinvention, and a realization of who you are truly being at your core. And I help you uncover that. I don't even want to say discover because it's there. So, uncover it and unlock it and really get you a plan and then put some things together. And that's why I love the blend of my whole background as being an educator and a college professor is because I've been really good at mapping out plans and curriculum. And it's like, well, let's design the curriculum for your life. All right. So on YouTube, hi there, I did the introduction of Creed 3, and I probably late to the party. But if you've been watching me, you're like, well, why do I make all of these references to like movies? Well, I had this realization like as I was talking on YouTube, and as I was typing up my notes, I was like, you know what? I studied like cinematography in undergrad. I don't think a lot of people know that, and I've always been fascinated by the types of music selection, the camera angles, the pauses. Like we had to really go deep in undergrad. So a lot of the podcast that I started on my YouTube channel, the Brilliant Professor Ish podcast, it is starting off with documentaries. And I was like, why am I drawn to this? And then I've done some other videos about just movies and TV shows. And I have a whole line of them. I was like, well, why am I drawn to that? Well, that's why. But then after really looking at the life coaching space or being like looking at life holistically, I was like, well, what lessons can we learn? Let me go ahead and use, this quote unquote hobby and use it for content. So I started looking at, well, what are lessons that we can learn in our practical lives from the movies that we watch or the TV shows or even reality TV? Like I started watching a little bit of Married to Medicine. I was catching up and I was like, whoa. And all I can see now is like, we need to have some conversations. So I'm excited about this. So let me go ahead and jump right into it. YouTube, bear with me. I'm gonna catch Instagram up. If you have not seen the movie, I think it's a great movie. I'm probably just the last person to see it. So what we talked about on night one was just some high level lessons to learn from the movie. I won't go through in detail. You can go watch it on the replay on my YouTube channel at Dr. Vernita Glenn White. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you feel compelled to do so, as well as Instagram. You all do the same. And then now I'm on Threads. I think that's the all right. So the top lessons, if you see me looking over, because I have notes, that's what educators do. We have notes. All right. So embrace the power of resilience. I said that in my podcast, all of the people I talked about, resilience was always in there. But I talked about it from an angle of not just getting back up, but you're bouncing back, but with the better attitude, and you're focusing on your character as you're on your way to getting up. Then defining your own legacy, whether it is in business or your life, your family. If you were born into a family legacy like a last name or business or an empire, whatever the case, defining that and what does that mean for you if you were born into that. And then if you weren't born into what we may think of as a legacy, are you creating your own legacy? Even if you're not wanting to have children, there's still ways to leave your legacy of who you are as a person. And just because people have children, that doesn't mean that they're also passing down a legacy, but understanding what that means for you and are you defining it and working towards it. And then we talked about seeking mentors and role models, isolating coaches there. And then I said, once you become a particular age and you're really wanting people, especially outside of the corporate space, I can't talk too much about corporate, but I know that they have mentors and role models that they get to align themselves with. There's like a whole thing with in the corporate space. But outside of that, especially when you're getting into life and business and things like that, you can have role models from afar, reading their books or going to programs. But when you really want someone to show you the ropes, really be there with you one on one, and you're over a particular age of in your, like, I'll say out of college age, then it's time for you to invest in your role model so you can get the highest quality. I'm not saying that every person, uh, that you have to pay every single person for them to give you advice, but when you're going to higher levels and you're wanting people to say, no, tell me exactly what you did, now you're asking them a lot for their time and resources and things like that. So if you want better results, then you might want to invest. And overcoming self-doubt, that's what we talked about overall. And a lot of us deal with self-doubt. It's just how quickly can you overcome overcome it and deal with it to move on to where you want to be in life. And then balancing ambition and personal relationships. We talked about that. We saw that in how all of that played out. And then it was a part in here. I didn't really talk too much about it, but embracing cultural identity. And that could be, you know, culture is anything that is defined. It's not just about your skin color or where you were born. It could be like where your city, your neighborhood, your group, your social group, or however. So just embracing your cultural identity and understanding what that is. And if anyone wants to talk more about that, we can. All right, so now getting into day two. So what I did for this is quite, oh, my light went out a little bit on YouTube. All right, YouTube. I hope you all can. I'll lean in. So what I did for uh let me see. So what I did for day two, I was like, okay, let's look at the characters and what are some positive traits, about these characters that we can learn from them. And I keeping it characters because that way we're not talking about like the actors directly. I noticed that when um, sometimes when people give examples, it's like, well, you're talking about this person. I was like, I don't know these people. I don't know that person. That was just my opinion. And then like I look at people who do like reaction videos or talk about pop culture and things that are happening, and then people in the comments like go in on the commentators, and it's like they get to comment, they're not really talking about the person themselves, they're just talking about the action and what people put on display, right? So I was like, to avoid all that, let's just stick to the characters. So we know Adonis Creed. I'm gonna jump right into it. So what are some of his positive traits that we can learn from, whether you are always like this or you're like, what would I do with a little bit more of that? So the first one is determination and perseverance. When I work with clients, and I've learned this also, this question of what would it look like if I had 5% more determination and perseverance? And sometimes we like to think that we're determined and we persevere through anything, but if we're honest, that's not always true. So it says like Adonis demonstrates unwavering determination to prove himself to achieve greatness, and he really did do that. And we saw that on all of the different levels, or the different, what am I trying to say? I'll just say within the trilogy of Creed, we saw that every step of the way he was determined. One, he was determined not to be like his daddy, but and two, he was determined to be like the greatest fighter. So he really had to push past some limits. And have you all seen the training? Like, I know they had to do a lot of this in real life, so they could be fit. But you want me to punch a wall? You want me to pull an airplane? you know, that level of training. So when you ask yourself, when you see people at a certain level, and you can look at it any of the life categories. And in my book, I talk about five, but then I've been working on like researching and doing case studies, and I've come up with 15, but you don't have to go that far. But if you look at anybody that let's talk about role models or people that you admire, and you're like, wow, what would it take to get there? And then they tell you, either you're going to say, okay, I like that blueprint. I am determined not to live their actual life, but I'm determined to reach my level of success, at that level. Or you could be like, it doesn't take all of that. There's some, I've seen some like athletes or people who are in bodybuilding or whatever the case may be, like in fitness. And people are like, well, what is your routine, or what do you eat, and this, that, and the other? And then they'll tell them, and they're like, oh, nobody got time for that. It doesn't take all of that. Well, I mean, you don't want to look like them. So don't ask them. You're not determined to eat what they eat. You're not determined to work out like they work out, and you're definitely not going to persevere because you will give up. So just be careful. Like when you say, I'm a determined person, I'm going to persevere through anything, you need to set the goal and be honest with yourself. And so with Adonis, he knew that this is what it was. This was the plan. I'm going to work with the best and I'm going to do it. The other thing is a growth mindset. Adonis Creed did have a type of growth mindset. Like even though he was a natural born fighter, we saw like that in the first one. He was a natural born fighter. He had natural skill set, natural talent, but he still need to be trained and understand that what you may have thought boxing looked like was not the case. So he had to do that once when he was in the ring and getting trained by Rocky. But in this one, also as a businessman, because now he's on the other side of the ring, he had to open up his mind to, well, what does it look like to be the promoter? And it didn't show too much of that, but that's why I like going deeper into these lessons. This was really about Oh, I thought. Well, Instagram, I hope you can hear me because it was like hang on, but I've been going in for like 15 minutes, so I hope you are there too. YouTube, I know some of you are there. Go ahead and you can comment. I may, if I can't see it, I'll move my notes over so I can. All right, so sometimes so they didn't really go too much into that, but I saw that as a life lesson. It was like, okay, there's another side. Now you are Adonis, the businessman. So how are you really going to show up, and are you going to listen because you can't act a certain way? Now, I think sometimes a lot of us like to say, sometimes people say, well, I'm open minded, so that means I have a growth mindset. Not necessarily. You can be open minded about something so you can hear it, but then to actually want to improve and to seek it out constantly and to adapt, especially when it gets challenging, that's where the growth is because growth is uncomfortable. So you just having an open mind to something is not enough to say that you have a growth mindset. And I know a lot of us like to say that, but I studied growth mindset where in the education realm where Carol Dweck came and fixed mindset and growth mindset. And there's a lot of people who think they have a growth mindset when it's actually a fixed mindset. The good news is you can work on that. So it's not flat, it doesn't stay, but you have to be honest with yourself. It's like, I, I don't so like when people say I don't like change, then you have a fixed mindset because what do you think, is gonna happen? Now, I loved Adonis and all of the parts of the all of the why can't I think of the word? If you know the word I'm trying to say, put it in the chat. So I'm just gonna keep saying trilogy because I don't even know why the word is escaping me. But there are times, so something negative about the character Adonis is impulsiveness. Now, being impulsive can be seen as a negative trait, and when you do too much of it, absolutely, you're going to suffer the consequences because you automatically react. But then I'm going to say that there are times when you do need to be impulsive. When I know, like in business, people say there's a need for speed in business, or and it's like, okay, I need to react on this. I will ask for forgiveness later, but I am just going to go ahead and do it. And I think sometimes a little bit of that is good. But if you're doing it all the time and all of the consequences are negative after you do that, then that might be something you want to pull back on. So I personally, I don't think being impulsive is always a bad thing. But if it's something about, quick tempered, using your emotions, or trying to buy something, like if you're an impulse buyer or an impulse eater or anything like that, that's where we need to work on some things. But I personally, and if you agree, you can put that in the chat as well. Or if you disagree, go ahead and say that too. But I think that overall it can be a negative trait. But if it's something in you, that's how you were created, and that's just make sure we lean a little more on the positive side with that. But Adonis, we know he would jump, and I think that's part of that what made him a good boxer, in my opinion. Now, ego and pride, yes, ego and pride is a big one. He definitely had that chip on his shoulder. But how many of us, especially when we know that we are the ish, a lot of us do have that ego, and there is a sense of pride. But when it comes to the point where it's causing a strain on relationships and your confidence is not with humility, now it's with arrogance, now we have a problem. So I think ego is good as long as it's, and I'm going to say this, as long as with the little e, a little ego. And I heard somewhere, if you know who said it, then you let me know. But ego is like edging God out, you know like your creator, like you have arrived somewhere. I am in the self-help personal development space, but I'm just going to be realistic with you. We can't help ourselves. So you can read, I'm just saying, you can say what you want to say, believe it or if you don't. We can read so many books, we can get as many coaches as we want. As someone who is one, we cannot help ourselves. There's a higher power, I say God, that is helping, that has created and has ordained us to have a direction. So when we achieve great things, that's what he wants us to do. But when we say I did this on my own, then that's when we are being on the egotistical side. Or even you don't even have to take it that high. If you know, like if you had support, if you had coaches, or if you had like mentors, role models, family, friends, I'm not saying that you have to go around saying I did all this by myself. I mean, name all the people who ever like helped you get to a level, but you understand that you were not just here by yourself. Now, there are some people I know. I think Issa Rae did a speech, and I think Snoop Dogg did something similar. It's like I like to thank myself. I did this. I worked hard. I didn't have a problem with that because I understood there is a point where no, I was here who did this. A real moment right here went out. Well, I go big because I was about to say the word, but the social media streets are a little sensitive. I know when I go up. I'm gonna be like, I was on this YouTube, this Instagram, all this stuff when nobody's looking at me, nobody's talking back to me. And then so when people come in, months or years later, and they're like, oh my gosh, you got so many people. I was like, yes, I was the one by myself on the live stream. But no, real talk. So I think having a little ego and pride in yourself is good. Oh, but again, when it leads to conflicts, when it leads to you being arrogant, that is a negative trait, and we're not going to do that. But a lot of people, a lot of us who are high achievers, successful in areas, especially people who look like me, a lot of times we've been taught, well, stay humble, or don't talk, don't think so highly of yourself, this, that, and the other. And it goes like to the complete opposite. But there is a part where you need to speak highly of yourself. I know one time I did not get a job as I was going to be an assistant professor because I was on this whole kick about being the US Secretary of Education. And I was in a job interview, and I was just answering the questions, being my little professional self, just saying what I need to say and then don't elaborate anymore. And I didn't get it. And then so I was like, okay, now I know I'm thebomb.com. What is the problem? And one of the people said, well, you didn't talk enough about yourself. Like you have an impressive resume. We've seen all of this stuff. You can answer the questions really well, but you were just still like somebody on paper. You did not come like you didn't fully put yourself out there. You didn't talk about yourself enough. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But my counterparts who didn't have nowhere near as much of what I had, they really talked about themselves in not in a bragging way, but like saying like, yes, I can. It was just a difference, and I was like, wow. So just nowhere to put it. So we spent a lot of time on Adonis. Now we're going to Dame. I'll tell you the truth. I did not like Dame. And at first I was like, I don't like Jonathan, but I was like, remember, he's in character. So I did not like Dame. And I will share some positive things that can be seen out of Dame because, that's one part of being in the coaching space. You still want to be objective. Like I've worked with people, even as a college professor, I work with people and students I did not like. I'll just say it. I did not like. However, if they were still good students, if they still did they were supposed to do, I wasn't going to be mean or, not grade them appropriately. So I'm able to be objective. So again, there were some positive traits with Dane, even though I did not like him in that movie. Because like I said on night one on YouTube, I was like, I'd be doggone somebody come up and try to guilt trip me to go back to where I was when I done came up. I'm not going back. I'm not going back. And how dare you have the audacity to come and try to take what I've worked hard for. But anyway, so some positive things about young Dane, because I was reaching, is his ability to mentor and guide Adonis when he was younger. So he did do that. So he was there for Adonis. He was the superstar that Adonis aspired to. So he was there as a mentor when he was younger, a role model. He guided him, he showed him the ropes and things like that. So, and Adonis knew that. Now, I will say this, even though Dame was like, "You didn't care," blah blah blah, Adonis had never forgotten. Like, I know I looked up to you, man. Like, you were it for me. So Dame was a part mentor and some guidance. Okay, my puppy. I don't know why he's barking. He's gonna have to chill out. All right. So another part, and I it was digging deep, being resilient, and he had redemption. Like, he was like, okay, I can come out of this. There was a redemptive story. Resilience. If you spent 18 years in jail and you come out wanting to do better with your life, okay, excuse the barking. I'm not going to get up right now. So hopefully it's not too loud. All right. So if you spent 18 years in jail and then you still come out wanting to do something great with your life, I think that is huge. I've never spent time in jail, but my mom used to work in the jail ministry with women, and she would take me there so I can kind of see and interact. And, I was just there with her. And a lot of them were repeat offenders because they were like, it was so hard for them to actually function on the outside. So they didn't have that bounce back. A lot of them. Now, I'm not saying everybody. I'm just talking about the ones that my mom. It was a small group, so I don't need people saying anything. But the ones that I interacted with, a lot of them were like, it was hard when they had to go back out because they just couldn't get it together, and it was easier for them to be in jail. So they didn't have that bounce back muscle. And even when given the second chance, they just couldn't redeem themselves. And it was like, it's just better for me in here. So for anyone who's been in a situation like that and you've actually overcome and did something, that is tremendous. That is huge. So with Dame, even though I didn't like everything he did, the fact that he was like, no, I've been putting in the work to box. I am ready. I want to do this. He sought out Adonis for opportunity and spoke up for what he said he wanted. So I I just got to give him props for that, even though I didn't like his character, but that was still a positive trait. And I wonder how many of us, when we've been smacked down, beat down, our version of being locked down for 18 years, how many of us, when we're finally released, do we go out and, hi, thanks for joining? When we go out and will we go ahead and seek that opportunity that we thought we lost? All right. So some negative traits. Of course, he was stubborn. I mean, I'm stubborn. You're probably stubborn. A lot of times I have them labeled as negative traits, but again, part of I'm looking at, if we were creative with that, then there is a reason and a way for us to use it. So being stubborn, it can be negative because when someone's trying to tell you something, it's like, look here, hard head. The old saying is, hard head makes a soft bottom, right? But being stubborn, when he did not want to change, Dane did not get his way, and he wasn't open to just wait your turn because he thought, well, I put in time already, so you want me to continue to waiting and continue to wait, even though it was like it's a process. Now, you may disagree, but his stubbornness, even though it can be considered as a negative trait, his stubbornness not to wait and to take no for an answer got him a shot at the title fight first time out. So sometimes you may have to buck the system a little bit. I'm just saying. Sometimes you may have to use that stubbornness, especially when I'm going for this shot. So it didn't work out too well for him as we saw, but there was a little moment where it did. But the other side of that to being a not so great trait is when you're not open to new perspectives and understanding that things have changed. So that goes along with having a growth mindset. So I want to say this, when you have a growth mindset, you may not have a growth mindset in every area of your life, right? You may have a growth mindset in finances and you can see it, But then when someone is talking about relationships and how you communicate, you're like, well, why I gotta talk? Well, why I gotta say that or not say that? Like it's my mouth. I say what I want to say. So I just want you to be. I want you to understand that like a growth mindset in one area doesn't necessarily transfer over into other areas. And I'm like the person to say, no, let everything transfer over. But a growth mindset doesn't always transfer over, and it did not do that with Dame. Yes, movies are a great way for us to um, create it to build emotional attachment to the characters. Yeah, absolutely. So regret and guilt. I personally work not to have any regrets, but there are sometimes you're like, oh man, that wow, I wish. So with Dane, a regret could when he made the decision to pull out the gun to and go to prison. Well, or when he had his other priors, whatever he was doing before that, he probably regretted doing all of that because that led up to that one moment when he pulled the gun out and then got him the 18 years. And then the guilt of what was happening to them when they were younger, the guilt of missing his shot. So his guilt was like, you know, personal, like internal. It's like I messed up or the guilt of I could have worked hard. It's just carrying that along. It wasn't the guilt of what happened. Actually, it was just the guilt of I missed my shot. So I think guilt is something that helps us feel and get convicted. But also, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with having like guilt because that is an emotion like guilt. What happens is when that guilt turns to shame about what you've done, now that's where we got to do some real work because it's like if you don't I think if you don't feel guilty it's like, well, have you been convicted? Do you feel some type of way? Do you feel at all? But to wallow in it and it goes into shame and depression, then that's when the guilt has gone out of whack. So he had guilt from his eras, and then I think he had some guilt at the end because it was like I should have just kept my mouth closed, learned some things about boxing and not just fighting. And maybe I wouldn't have been in this situation. So I know like some people were like, oh, because I try not to watch too much because I was late. And so I try not to watch too much so I can have my own thoughts. But I did see some things where it was like, well, of course Adonis was gonna win. The movie is called Creed. But here's what I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say Adonis if you didn't watch it. Oops, spoiler alert, but you can you probably have at this point. I'm not gonna say Adonis won just because he was Adonis. This is what I think. Not only were like Dame did his thing, but Dame wasn't trained. For, like he didn't have that up level skill set. He was just going based on raw talent. And raw talent will get you into some places for sure. You can wing it, you can get in there, you can do your thing. But when the skill set has been perfected and it has the fundamentals, so when your talent has been put into a place where it's honed and refined and polished, that's where that is going. I think that is going to trump just natural born talent. That's just I'm just gonna put it out there. So it's like I look, a lot of us got natural things. We can get up here, we can do our thing, and it is amazing. But you're gonna go with somebody who's been doing it and doing it and doing it, and they've studied it and they got it, and you're like, it's something about them that is called training, that is called time in, that is called practice, that is perfecting the skill set. So I think even though Duke told Adonis, like, all right, throw all that boxing stuff out the window, it's time for you to fight, because it was like he got into the last round using everything he had learned. But this was something deeper than that, where there are times where I just gotta be raw, like I gotta go off script. But when you go off script, when okay, how am I say this? Let me back it up. I'll use myself in case you're not understanding what I'm saying with the boxing. I know that I can teach, I can speak, I'll stick with teaching and speaking. I know I can do that. I can get up there on stage. I can come to you all and talk without anything. But if I don't sit down and say, okay, what are some points that I really want to talk about? One, to keep me focused, and two, to make sure that if I'm going to go off on a tangent, I still have an anchor. That makes me, I think, a stronger educator or teacher because I've prepared myself. I know where I want to go. I know the points that I want to hit. I know the stories that I can come up with to connect to that point versus me just talking off the top of my head. If I'm going to go give a keynote speech, can I go out and just talk to the crowd and move? Absolutely. But how much better would I be had I written out my script or my speech, learned it to a point, practically memorized it, and then if anything comes out and it says, "All right, let whatever comes out come out," then because I perfected it and worked on it this way, is more refined and it's a different feel. All right. If you don't understand what I'm saying, let me know. But I just wanted to put that out there. Like sometimes raw talent is not gonna beat someone who's really been in there and perfecting their craft and honing their craft. I just want to say that. If you disagree, let me know. I'm cool with that. Now we're gonna go with Bianca. I have two more people, Bianca and then Marianne. I'm gonna save Duke because I'm gonna put him on night three. So I'm gonna save Duke. We'll probably talk about him on Friday. Yeah. Or I'll let y'all know. So Bianca, her positive traits are she's of course resilient and she adapts well. If you don't know, she had progressive hearing loss. So she was a musician, aspiring musician. I think yeah, aspiring musician, singer, songwriter, all of that. But as her hearing began to deteriorate, she had to shift. And then she said in the movie, it was like, well, I couldn't hear the sound of the music. So she transitioned to writing music for other artists. And I remember when Dane asked her, it was like, well, how does it feel to have someone else sing your music? And she gave an answer that was like, it's okay. But she told Adonis the truth, like, that hurt. Like I still had dreams and hopes. And I mean, yeah, I'm making progress. I'm still doing things, but it still hurts. But she adapted. But I wonder how many of us, when things happen and it doesn't go according to plan, instead of adapting, we just say, just throw the whole thing out the way, throw the whole music career out the way, throw the whole business away, throw the whole whatever it is that did not work out, throw it all away. I wonder how many of us do that. Are we able to adapt? There's one lady in a group that I'm in. Her name is Rolanda Sullivan. You can go look her up, and she said this phrase. She was doing like a kind of a teaching in the group that I was in, and she said this phrase, dream differently. And I won't get into too much because I don't know how much of her story she said, but it was something with her family. It didn't go according to plan. And she used to pray to God to say, God, fix this particular situation. I've been praying for this particular situation. And it got to the point where God didn't change it at all. So what she had envisioned for her family in this particular area, she now had to redefine and dream differently. And I was like, wow, that is true adaptability. Like when something is not going to change, can we look at it in a different way and still move forward without throwing it all away? She didn't throw this family situation out the window and say, well, it didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out. But and it won't. Like sometimes we're like, well, I'm just going to have a different mindset. I'm just going to pray about it. I'm going to do all of things. And just sometimes it's not going to change. It's just not. So what are you going to do to adapt to that? And I think Bianca was a good person to look at that. She didn't leave the industry completely, but she learned to adapt within that. And that was a positive trait. And embracing change, another part of being having a growth mindset. And then being a supportive partner. She held Adonis down. You can say whatever you want to say, but she was a very supportive partner. And I liked her role in the trilogy. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I liked her role in that in there. Yes, practice your foundation and then adapt as you. Thank you. That's what I was elevate to resonate. Yes, that's what it is. I'm going back to the what I talked about with the Donnas and Dane. That is it. Practice your foundations and then adapt as you go. This is on Instagram. Thank you, Elevate to Resonate. I'm going to make sure I say that that's what it is. Practice your foundations and adapt as you go. Whew. All right. And then you get one flat tire, you don't punch holes in the other three. Right. Now, so I had to work on myself. I was that person. I was like, oh, this one thing isn't working. Everything, just shut it all down. If I was building a house and I broke a window, you know what? Start from scratch. But don't do that. Dream differently. Have a adapt. All right. So being a supportive partner, I know that there was someone on Threads, and this is not about having a supportive partner, but it kind of relates in a way. She was like, "I'm going into my third year of my doc program, but I know it's going to be just like me and my cat." And I was like, "It doesn't have to be. You're just going to have to look at ways to get supportive people around you, and they may not always be your family or your friends. You're going to put yourself out there for the situation that you're in. In this case, it was in a marriage, in a relationship, in a partnership with Adonis and Bianca. And she allowed him to move through. There were some things I'm like, girl, just leave him alone and go. But she was like, all right, I'm gonna let you cool off and walk to and go do her thing. And then they eventually came back. She really didn't like him fighting, but she understood that that was a dream of his, and she supported him every step of the way. So I, watching all three of the movies, I could see the progression of her support to him as a partner. So I thought that's a great trait to have. I Now I said I wasn't gonna keep crossing over, but there's a situation on Married to Medicine. It's old, where Contessa wants to go to a program in Nashville, and she wasn't feeling like Scott was supporting her. But support doesn't just mean, all right, I'm gonna just let you go do your thing. It's also about, all right, if we both agree that this is how it's gonna work, how are we going to come to the table, and what is it going to look like for us? Both of us share what we need to share, and then how are we going to be committed to the decision that we made? That's also being a supportive partner. It says about her being negative, as being overprotective. There were times where she was overprotective with Adonis, and sometimes when you're overprotective, you're not allowing someone to grow, or you're not allowing, them to make their own mistakes. My mom was very overprotective of my sister, and more so of me. One, I'm the firstborn, but also I firstborn by 7 years, so very overprotective of me. I am very overprotective of my little sister. And now, some of that can be good. I was like, yep, I can see the benefits of it. Yeah, I'm gonna keep being overprotective, but being objective, that's smothering someone, and we're not allowing the person to experience life on their own. Yes, we want to make sure that they don't have. We get a lot of us can see like you're about to go into this pit. I am going to jump and put myself over the hole so you don't go over the pit. Or better yet, I'm just going to keep you over here. I'm not going to even let you know that there's a hole, there's a pit over there. But then we keep it from that pit, and it's a big crater over here. So that can be the downside of being over protective. But again, understanding that you want to help someone, especially when you love and care about them, you still have to allow them to experience those feelings. The other one about sacrificing personal goals. I haven't had to experience this myself, but I know that a lot of people that I work with, it is they've come to me because it's like I'm ready to reinvent myself. I'm ready to transition into something because I put this on the back burner either for a spouse, a partner, children, or a different type of career that someone wanted them to go through. So I'm like, well, before we move on, we have to talk about you feeling that you've sacrificed your personal goals, because that can lead to resentment and bitterness. With Bianca, she did sacrifice her her music career to a certain point, even though part of it had to do with her hearing. But she did sacrifice that because it was like, in order for Adonis to be who he was, she had to be right there with him, traveling with him, making sure that part of that protectiveness, not getting into any fights, not popping off like he used to. And then in this movie, when they're married and then now they have a child, she's still like right there front row on the at the boxing match. And even when she had a label, like she was at the label party, she was still kind of sacrificing her personal goals a little bit, or her personal ambition, because even though she wrote the song for the artist, it was because Adonis was also promoting something at the party, so it really wasn't her full time to shine. So I thought she handled it well, but that's the movie. In real life, people are angry, bitter, resentful. They hate the other person for sacrificing their goals. I hear a lot of mothers who are like, I'm gonna wait to do this until the children grow up, or I gotta take care of this before I can go back. And that's a hard thing. So I'm gonna leave that one there. If you have any insight or things that you want to share about that. I don't have any actual personal stories, but I do hear stories from other people, and I just listen. And when it gets to something like this, especially as a coach, I listen, and then I try to listen deeper than just what it's like when I don't have something actually relate to. I try to go deeper and find that connection to help my client out of this. So if you all want to share some things that I can use, go ahead and do that. That would be great. And then the last one, did I skip one? Is Mother Mary Ann. People can say what they want to say about Mama Mary Ann. So Mama Mary Ann, she has some of the same like kind of traits as Bianca. I saw her as a little bit of being overprotective, but in this case with Adonis, she needed to, because he didn't see Dane for what he was. So she kept all of those letters. And I remember there was a scene when he was like, he wants to come after my title because you made me think that I forgot about him. You made me think that I abandoned him, because she kept all the letters that he wrote from jail. She kept every single one of them. And then she was like, oh crap, he done got out. So she went and looked at like, okay, what does this boy want? Pretty much. So Adonis was pissed off, and so, yeah, she did protect him from that. She shielded him from that. And then he was like, because of you, all of this is your fault. And she said, you're right. I'm to blame for all of it. She didn't say this part, but she was getting to, and your success. So if you're going to blame me for him wanting to take your title, well, blame me for you having the title in the first place. She knew what type of man or boy at that time, but she knew who Adonis was. And she knew like part of his loyalty, where it was, and all of that. And she was like, no, in her mind, she saw greatness. And what we're not about to do is let this keep you from going to where you are. So if you have all this anger and aggression, we need that to go channel that somewhere else. But I'd be doggone after I done rescued you, that you're gonna let this guilt trip drag you back down to the gutter. So people can say what they want to say. That was her. That it could have been a negative trait, but I'm like, that's a positive thing to me. She was also she had unconditional love, because if you watch the trilogy, Adonis was going in sometimes on Marianne, but she had unconditional love, especially taking him in. And if you don't know the backstory, her husband, had an affair, and that was the child. Her husband died, and she took care of Adonis when she found out that he was out here in group homes, and took him in. And at the end of the movie, and you can tell the the unconditional love that she had. She was slipping in and out. I had to take a breath. I'll tell you why I had to breathe for that moment. She was slipping in and out, and then it went from Adonis to her talking to Apollo, and she was like, you hurt me more than I can imagine, but Adonis saved me. And that really kept her alive and kept her going, and that allowed her to forgive Apollo. The power of love that Marianne showed, and then what we can do. I used to think love was just like, okay, yeah, I love, Christ loved church, Jesus love. I love my mom, I love my grandparents, love everybody. But I've been really trying to understand just love, and the power of love, and what love could really do. Can love really overcome? And it really, really can. And I won't get too much into that, but just watching just that, her in that movie, and comparing it to unconditional love, I think that was a great thing to see from her. I had to pause, and I had to give myself kudos for growth, because She died of cancer, and there was a scene in there, and it reminded me of the moment of my mom when she was about to make her transition and how she saw things a little differently before she transitioned, or she started talking into things that we did not understand. And I did not cry. I had to take a moment here, but I did not cry. And it's been 11 years, but I think that was growth for me. And I put that out. I text my, well, I didn't text my sister because I didn't want her to get in. I was like, I don't know where she is in her head space. But I put it out on threads and I was like, I did not cry. That is growth for me to be able to watch a scene with a dying mother and just be like, okay, one, I was watching the movie for research purposes, but two, I was like, wow, look at me. I have grown. And that's one way you can track personal growth. I just wanted to put that out there. Channel that anger and keep your eyes on the prize. Absolutely. Now, a lot of us may not have anger from group homes, or we may not be boxers, but we have some anger somewhere, and I just want to know, like, where can we channel that anger for somewhere, and really focus and get to the levels we want to get to. And then when we channel that, and after we release that, what can love do for us? How can we use love to really help us to overcome, and not just use it as a soft word, but really embracing the power of unconditional love and literally let worlds move. Marianne's love for Adonis literally shifted the trajectory of his life. And that is powerful. The love. She took in her husband's mistress son. And this little boy who she could have just let stayed out there also allowed her to forgive a man she wasn't able to for decades. Like, wow. All right. So that is what I am going to end with. I said I would save Duke for for day three, because I want to get into Duke. I didn't go too much into his positive and negative traits. I want to look at Duke more from the perspective of a coach, because that's what I do. So, and then if you are a coach as well, it's not like I am just teaching you, but I would love to hear your insights if you want to show up and let me know, like, if your takeaways when I talk about Duke and the perspectives that I see. I would love for us to have a conversation there. You can join me again on YouTube. Thank you for those of you who are watching live. Thank you for those of you who are on Instagram. I will be back. I'm going to say Friday. Yeah, because I'm doing it like I teach college. I used to teach classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, depending on the semester. So I was like, hey, why not? So I will be back on Friday if you're there. If not, be sure to tune in on the replay and still leave me your thoughts. If you are someone who wants to connect with me, you can connect with me right here on social media, or you can go to the link in my bio for my link tree, and I have different resources available if you want to stay connected that way. The one thing that's up is my personal guided retreat kit, because I believe that everyone can start with the foundation of coaching within themselves. So you don't have to, I believe, and this is someone who is a coach, life changer, strategist, solutionist. I don't think you have to immediately go out and go hire somebody to say, hey, fix my life. You don't have to. If you want to, great, but you can start with yourself. That's how I started. Like, let me get me a staycation in my city. I'm just grateful that I live in a place where people come to vacation. So it was great for me. But you don't have to go far. You can go to a hotel room down the street from your house if you want to. Get yourself together and go through the questions in these series and rediscover who you are with my personal guided retreat kit. I give you some insights on how to set that up, what it should look like, or what it could look like. And I have some tips for you for when you get back home, because that's when the real work starts. All right. So thank you so much for listening and learning with me. I will see you next time, and have a great evening or a great day or a good morning wherever you are in the world. Bye. Bye, YouTube.